Joined now by the defensive coordinator at the Houston Cougars, linebackers coach as well, Todd Orlando. And Coach, we'll go through all your players in just a bit, go through their reels, and you can tell us what you like about them, what makes you excited to have them coming onto campus here at U of H. But a couple questions before we do all that. First off, welcome to U of H. And I'll just throw it right out there. I know that everybody's wondering what kind of defense are we going to see at U of H with you in charge?
We're going to be multiple. I've taken the approach, and especially the last couple of years, is that we're going to attack offenses. So we'll see exactly what we have. We've been working with the kids. You can hear my voice, and we're doing as much encouragement for championship-style football as we can. But we will start to learn a little bit more when we get later on, and we start to get into watching guys do a little bit more pedal, a little bit more open up their hips, and see how they really move around. So we have a decent beat. I've watched the kids, all the film from last year and about halfway of 2 years ago to get a sense of, who they are, what they can do, and then we'll just work them into the system.
With so many different offenses you see now in college football, spread, air raid, running the football, whatever. There's it seems like hundreds of different types of offenses. Do you feel like that's a reason you have to be versatile on the defensive side?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it's some people just take the ball and slam it at you, and you have to have a defense for that. Some people are more spread, so you might have to have more people off the football to be able to defend that. So nowadays, offensive guys are so creative, and they're utilizing their personnel as well, and you have to combat it. So, but the one thing that we do have is we have kids that can run, which is really exciting.
Whenever you would have an opposing coach that talks about your defense, what would be the biggest compliment you would hear an opposing coach say about your D?
Well, I think it's make them work. I mean, if they go into a meeting room, I think the one thing that we don't want offensive guys to do is sit there and have, 5 guys at a table demanding 7 plays each because they all can work. So you try to be as multiple as possible so that way their creativity gets a little bit lost, but you don't become, an automatic type of deal where we can attack you this way. And I think if we can put it out there well enough that a play that they want to design and you run a defense that could stop it, there becomes a little bit of a crapshoot for them. I think anytime you become, you have absolutes, I like to call them, where you do this all the time, I think you're in trouble, defensively.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the players you have coming in, 5 linebackers that we'll take a look at. We'll start with the one nearby at North Shore, Emeka Egbule, the 6'3", 215-pounder. Just as we watch it through, what do you like about him? What do you like about bringing him into your D?
Well, I like the fact that he set a school record with 13.5 sacks. That's probably the start of it. It's a funny story, and I'll tell it a little bit later on today and tonight. His father told me it was the worst business decision he ever made when he promised him $20 if he got a sack. So I thought that was pretty funny. He's an athlete. I had a chance to watch him play basketball, and I've seen him almost jump from the foul line and two-hand dunk. And I mean, he's a tremendous athlete. But what I like about him more than anything else is the fact that he's extremely focused. He's a different kid. He's the greatest kid on the planet. But then when you see him live and he's in competitive mode, he's really, really focused. So he's going to play an outside backer spot for us. We're going to use his athletic ability. I know exactly what he can do and get after the quarterback. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, watching him on film there, I saw him there and down at the defensive line spot on the defensive end. You say you're going to move him over to the linebacker. And what's tough with that transition, moving somebody from the D end to the linebacker spot?
It can be, but the package itself has some things into it where he can actually play down at times and he can play up on his feet. But you're just evaluating the athlete. To me, that's coaching. That's what we get paid to do. So, from a mental standpoint, you deal with a little bit of learning. But most of these kids, they've been playing ball their whole life. So I'm excited to work with him because he's a focused individual. He's a smart kid. And his athletic ability, he's got a chance.
Yeah, you mentioned he's an athlete, played basketball on that state championship North Shore team.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. They're like the Globetrotters. I saw those guys, and I was just in pregame, and I was watching about 10 or 11 guys dunk a basketball. It's like, I'm glad I'm here, man. Just for normally when they come out, there's nothing to it. You kind of sit around and you kind of wait for the game. I'm watching that. Well, it was impressive.
All right, one area kid to another, Leroy Godfrey, tough district. Both of these kids in tough districts. Godfrey from Elkins High, we were a 3-star recruit by Scout, one of the top 24 linebackers in the state. Depending on what you look at, top 30, one of the top kids in the Houston area as well. What are we looking at when we see Leroy Godfrey?
Yeah, Leroy. I mean, when Yancey McKnight gets his hands on him, we're going to have ourselves something special. He's got he's got a huge frame on him. The biggest thing when I saw him physically was I looked at his lower half. I mean, he's a very, very athletic kid, and he's a great kid. He's going to major in engineering. He's a sharp guy, and I like everything about him. You know, his family. And you can see him run on that play right there. And he's an explosive athlete now. And he's played both. He's played on his feet. He's going to play in a system that's a little bit similar to what we're going to do here. So he gives us that flexibility to play into the boundary. We can move him around. We can put his hand down. We can do a lot of stuff with him. And like I said, he's going to be a little bit of a developmental guy to become the guy that we want with him. But he's got a great frame, and he's very intelligent. And at the end of the day, you're recruiting, but the second that national letter comes in, you're developing. So that's the part that I'm excited about him.
Moving on to DJ Jenkins, really Houston area out of Huntsville, just a little bit north. And, you know, on paper, this one looks exciting. One of the top middle linebackers in the state, top 35, 40 linebacker
guy
in the
too.
national.
I think this guy, you know, is I don't want to call it a kind of a steal, but he's probably the really hidden gem. He's got a very high ceiling right now. So he's physical, he's athletic. When you look at the things that he's done, I mean, he's a basketball player. I've seen him literally jump outside the foul line, do that. He could throw the shot. He'll probably throw the shot over 55. He played some receiver last year. He's a dynamic athlete, and he's a big guy. We've probably got to keep an eye on him in terms of how much he's eating to begin with to come into it, because he's got a great frame on him. But I really think he's got a very, very high ceiling. I'm excited about him.
How often do you see linebackers where you know they come in as a freshman and you already have to watch that weight a little bit to keep them in that linebacker spot?
Yeah, it's always a call by us, because you'd like to recruit guys and move them up and then move them in. So a safety backer, a backer to outside backer, and then all the way down the line until you get inside with the interior guy. So we'll see how hungry he is, and you don't want to try to discourage a kid from eating. So that'll be something that we'll have a talk with him.
Just in general, not talking about him specifically, but what's the figure you wanted at? What's the number that's almost too much to play linebacker?
Well, I think when you get past 250, I think depending on how long you are, the good part about this crew is right now is on average they're at 6'2.5" and a little bit under 230, and that's the cool part about this, because you don't have to do too much build-up. Yance will have to take them, and he'll have to trim them down a little bit, because the kids are, at certain spots, a little bit loose in their core and those things. But that just comes with, conditioning. So we'll keep an eye on it. But I think once you get past 250, unless the guy's 6'4", 6'5", you're probably asking for a little bit too much. So in the 240 range is probably the comfort level. Those guys, maybe a couple guys on the outside might go to 45, 47, somewhere around there. But I think that's the max.
All right, we'll move it along now to one out of Galveston. Jordan Milburn plays for former University of Houston star Kimball Anders.
Yeah,
nice
he
to
ended
keep
up being
one.
pretty good, huh?
He certainly did. So nice to have one of the own bringing one of their kids here to campus, and watching Milburn on film. So some things that stick out to you, some things that you like.
Yeah, he's explosive. I mean, when you watch him run, I mean, he's out of the crew. And the thing that I really like about the kid is the first time that I called him, he was actually trying to track me down when I got hired. And it was kind of a conversation where he was saying, like, I heard you're pretty good. And I was like, I heard you're pretty good too. So we brought him up unofficially, and we sat down and we did some football together. And he's got a high IQ X and O guy. And he's a really, really neat kid. And we got into football, and there's some things that he did in high school that are going to be similar to what we're doing here. But just a really, really cool kid. He knows exactly what he has to get done. He's excited to get up here in the summertime, and he's got a high ceiling because he's explosive and he can run.
All right, Camden Ross, two-year captain, his team at Timber Creek High. We talked a little bit about him with Coach Herman, and he talked about how he was playing safety at high school at 240.
Yeah, so like we talked about beforehand, that's most of the success stories that I've had with NFL kids. A lot of those kids played in the back end, but you can see on his film, he's walking into the box and doing those things. He's at 238 right now, so he's a big guy. He's an engineering major. He's going to go in to do it along with Leroy. So he's very intelligent. So we're going to put him on the inside. He's a good athlete. I think he tripled 44, and he high jumped like 6'6". So that's at that weight, that's pretty impressive. So just another great kid, great family, and excited about him too.
Whenever you have these linebackers that come in, they really play all over. You see them at safety, some defensive end, outside, middle. Whenever you're looking at a player, you're recruiting a player, how do you determine, okay, this guy is going to come in at the middle, he might be coming as an outside linebacker, and then whenever they get onto campus, how do you determine who plays where?
When you look at a film initially, this is the way that I've done it in terms of development. I think the first thing you do is you look at the athlete and you see what you think he can do with it, because it's hard. Sometimes if, the non-trained eye can look at a guy and say, Cam's an example of it. He's playing safety. Well, I don't think he's fast enough to play safety. Well, let's not think that way. Or if there's a linebacker that's, 240 pounds that isn't the fastest guy with it, well, why don't you take the approach to look at his frame and see if he can be 280 pounds and be a 3 technique? So that, I think that's the approach that you have to take. But then after that's over with, you've got to do the best job that you can of evaluating what's inside his, inside his ears. That's probably the hardest thing that people don't, because you can't tell a kid that, hey, I'm going to make you this, unless that kid has the ability to process. And once you figure those things out, you'd be amazed with a lot of success stories that go into recruiting guys like that. Corner that maybe is just a hair too slow, but he goes and plays safety. He's an elite safety. And there's a lot of those stories with it. So there's a lot of projecting, but if you believe in the process that you have here and the development that you feel the program has with it, if the guy's a smart guy that will work his tail off, you've always got a chance with those guys. So when I was saying move them up and move them in, that's kind of the philosophy that you take.
Well, Coach, thanks for sharing your expertise and stopping by on this busy day.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Todd Orlando stopping by, defensive coordinator, linebackers coach at U of H.